Alrighty then, that was about halfway through the season, and the next episode is legitimately one of the best in the entire series. This is the level of quality that I would come to expect from watching the first 2 episodes of Sonic X. And man, there's just so much to love. But first, let me just go on a little tirade about a certain character. Helen should have been the main character of Sonic X. The thematic juxtaposition of Sonic, who can run really fast, and Helen, a disabled kid that can't run at all, opens up the potential for many interesting conflicts in the story. But I think that Helen is a way more wholesome and way less annoying character than Chris, the kid we actually got. Unlike him, she isn't a spoiled brat because she can't really afford to be, as her family is poor and is constantly trying to earn a good life for her. It would be interesting to see how Sonic, the free-natured rodent, would have had to deal with this character that in his eyes could never truly be free. I think it would open up the many possibilities of showing mature themes inside of this relatively unserious kids show, and also show why Sonic's character works so well with more serious stories, and why he's such a great paragon of a character overall. Those reasons are why I think that Helen should have been the main character of this series. Back onto why I think this episode is one of the best. The mediocre ending to the last episode is used to great effect in this one. Sonic and his friends get invited to the White House in order to have a party after defeating Eggman. Now this is done cynically just to boost the president's rating for the next election, and because of that, this is the first time where the government actively becomes a somewhat antagonistic force in this episode, nicely mimicking the soft environmental themes already found in the Sonic games, and kind of foreshadowing what's to come in the show. Sonic, on the other hand, has only one goal in mind this episode, and that is to take Helen to see the flowers that she always wanted to see on this island, but was never able to because her father is always working. This simple plot leads to many antics as Sonic and Helen have to essentially maneuver around the government as they try to catch them, inadvertently giving Helen the thrill of her life as Sonic makes her go on an adventure for what is probably the first time in her entire life. This is why I think Helen would have made such a great lead character. She embodies the same willful spirit for adventure and riding with the wind that Sonic has, but sadly is unable to due to her unlucky situation. And because of that, she never takes anything for granted and always seems to be enjoying everything in life to its fullest. This makes her character not only extremely likable compared to that of Chris, but the pure wholesomeness between the character interactions between her and Sonic elevate this episode to greater heights. And that gorgeous flower scene at the end of the episode is possibly one of the greatest animated parts of the show. The fact that she wants to leave the flower she wanted to see so much there as a way for other people to see it like her father is just so good. She's such a good person, unlike this twat. The final conversation she has at the end of this episode with her parents, and how they just feel so happy to see how enthusiastic she is despite her disability, is just genuinely great and emotional storytelling. It just feels like everyone who worked on the show put in the work to make this one of Sonic X's most memorable and well-written episodes by far, which is greatly appreciated after the 2-part slop that the audience was forced to sit through in the last episodes. Plus there's people drinking in this episode, and I just find that hilarious. Definitely an episode deserving of the S ranking. And right back to mediocrity. I'm sorry, but what else can I say about this episode except for the fact that it is extremely average, aggressively so. I like the beginning part where Chris and the crew can't go out anywhere because people keep staring at them as they are large anthropomorphic creatures that can talk. That was funny. I like the design of Eggman's egg fort. That looks cool. This gif of Sonic is pretty funny to me for some reason. Look guys, it's just a generic Eggman tries to take over plot. He attacks Station Square with his giant egg fort, and once again, Sonic is the only one who can stop him. At least Tails gives him a ring to help out this episode, and Sam shows back up again. But other than that, there is nothing actually notable, except for this chase sequence that I can remember anyways. With how many times Dr. Eggman has attacked, you'd think they would have started taking more drastic measures to get rid of him, permanently. But oh well, I guess it's not within the character's morals. Anyways, pretty boring episode, and the animation is hilariously bad again. C tier. I have to start moving through these episodes faster, man. Okay, so this is just another average episode, but I want to point out something I haven't mentioned yet. The explosions in this show are consistently badly done, and that's for a very good reason. It's because they make them using poorly rendered CGI every time. Look, I get it's hard to animate such a complex movement of matter in space, but you're seriously telling me that a multi-billion-dollar franchise couldn't have hired some more talent? Like, get the guys from Konosuba up in this joint. Imagine how much more fun and engaging this anime would look if they were the ones animating it. Anime compared to other mediums of television is actually more on the cheaper side anyways. Surely they have no excuse. What were we talking about again? Oh yeah, this episode. They have a tentacle monster in it.
Hey, get your tentacles off of me!
But nah, this is just another one of those beach episodes that I told you would become more common as time goes on. But this time around, it's Dr. Eggman who wanted to just go on a vacation to cool off from his past few failures. Sonic and his pals were only in the ocean to find the Chaos Terminal that was on their radars. Of course, Eggman can't let this happen, so conflict ensues, and it's slightly more interesting than the last episode because this time, Sonic is out of his element. Unfortunately, this is nowhere near the best water fight he has in the series. No, the best has yet to come for our blue fella. Sam is once again in this episode, and Sam is always a fun character to watch, so I'll let his sudden intrusions pass. The gang gets social security cards, and I think that there's a One Piece reference in this episode.
ずっと昔にこのグランブルーサファイア海の沖で沈んでしまった伝説の船なんだよ。
See, that's totally a reference. Listen guys, I got nothing. Pretty much just more of the same stuff that we've seen already, just a different setting. Same jokes, same poorly animated fights. Sonic is still cool, I guess, but other than that, I'm dry here, ironically enough. Now do you see why I say it's so hard to slog through this show? So many of the episodes just feel like Monster of the Week filler content in this earlier season. It makes it really hard to watch. Eventually the voice acting, the settings, the reuse animation, all of it leads to every episode looking and feeling the exact same to me. Oh wait, that guy has a unique hairstyle that I haven't seen in the show yet. 10 out of 10, great masterpiece, let's go. Okay, but seriously, just another C tier. Hopefully things improve later. Okay, I know this one might be a little crazy, but I actually kinda like this episode, if not for the fact that it feels more unique and well paced than what we have been getting so far. Because of that, it feels more memorable. This episode focuses around Knuckles and this guy he beats named Hawk. This episode also kinda soft introduces the Mystic Ruins, nicely foreshadowing the Chaos arc coming soon. The reason why I think this episode works so much better is because it focuses on Knuckles instead of Chris and this stupid gang. No offense, but when the writers focus more on the individual characters and their personalities, it makes for a lot more engaging storytelling, because you can explore them in more depth and nuance. Plus, Knuckles is a lot more serious of a character than everyone else, which makes him more likable because everyone seems to act like a goofball all the time. Anyways, Knuckles gets captured by these Yakuza wannabes after he tries to find Hawk. Well, he sure finds him alright, after getting captured of course. It's pretty nice that Hawk was able to tell him the location of the secret Chaos Emerald he found, which is useful. This episode is pretty unpredictable with the plot progression. Even though we do know what Knuckles' goal is in doing all of this, he wants to protect the Master Emerald. It delves into his duty as the guardian of the Emerald, and why he was so angry to be transported to this planet in the first place. It's genuinely compelling. It's eventually revealed that the cell they're in is being spied upon by the Yakuza boys. Because of this, Knuckles yells into his ear and escapes the facility, going to where Hawk hid the Emerald. It turns out that they were being followed by Rouge and one of Eggman's new robots that he's called E91, who describes itself in a quite questionable fashion. Knuckles and Hawk end up getting buried in their fight with the robot, and thus they have to dig their way out. This is when quite possibly one of the coolest moments in this season happens. Knuckles finds the in-game shovel gauntlets from Sonic Adventure in the show and uses them to dig out of the hole. It's really cool to see video game lore actively used in a story like this. I think it's pretty neat. Unfortunately for him, in the 0.5 milliseconds it took to dig out of the hole, Hawk was captured by the robot that Eggman sent to get the Chaos Emerald. Impressive. And a pretty good action sequence ensues as Knuckles, Rouge, and E91 are locked in a three-way deadlock with each other in order to get the Emerald. The animation is actually pretty alright for the most part, no ugly CGI here. And then the conclusion actually has the heroes win, not by Knuckles solving the conflict all by himself, but by Hawk actually being useful and putting the robot out with a bucket of water that's just lying around somewhere. Okay, so other than that, it's pretty dang good solid episode, and one that I definitely did not see coming. Sonic X is at its best when it focuses on the individual characters, rather than the whole cast all at once. A nice A ranking. Oh boy, here we are again folks. We have the annoying side characters, the pathetically laughable animation, and the predictable, ham-fisted plotline. We're back at the status quo of Sonic X. Phew, that last episode was getting a little too good for the show producers, am I right? Okay, but seriously, if it wasn't for the actual pretty good decent fight scene between Sonic and the monkey robot this episode, I would have just given this one a fat D. But you know what? I'm feeling kinda generous this video. So the plot of this episode has Tails' plane crash again in another fight with Dr. Eggman again. And oh my gosh, why do Chris's guardians just allow him to go on progressively more dangerous missions with Sonic? It makes zero sense whatsoever. Oh well, I only mind it so much because I dislike his character. Back to the main story. It turns out that a shady corporation is planning on bulldozing a big jungle in order to make a dam that they will force the residents to pay for. Hitting a little too close to home with this commentary show. Next thing you'll tell me is that corporations would lie in order to justify such a dumb and idiotic action. But that would never happen.
毎日土砂崩れが起きた場合、ダムで食い止めるという目的もありますし、こんな草原で土砂崩れがあるか。いや、This is actually a pretty funny joke that saves the episode a little bit. But not that much anyways. Tails randomly remembers his backstory with Sonic, and how he thought he was once useless, and still kinda is to be honest, but that Sonic eventually gave him his will to fight. And so, he will inspire the same vigor in these savannah animals that definitely do not understand a word that he's saying right now. Not that it matters anyway, as Eggman's bumbling minions ruined their plan for constructing a dam anyways, rendering that entire plotline essentially hollow. Great writing, guys. Seriously, why did Eggman have to be a villain this episode? Does he need to be the main antagonistic force in every single plotline? Hell, some of the best episodes in the show actually work without having him as a main source of conflict. Well, anyways, he has a new robot that can camouflage with its environment, but apparently only natural and organic things that it blends in with. How does that work? And also, why would you build it like that? Making me question the Doctor's intelligence again in the show. That's not good. Oh well, at least the fight scene with this robot is pretty good. The way Sonic gets absolutely clobbered for no discernible reason this episode is pretty funny all things considered, if not a bit out of nowhere. He's forced to use his other senses in order to fight the robot off, which is pretty creative. I'm a big fan of the idea that using your other senses in a fight gives you a major advantage. Anyway, Sonic runs into the construction site and Eggman destroys all of the gear and machines that were going to be used to build the dam. What a completely organic and fun way to end a major conflict built up in this episode. Can't believe it doesn't blend in with other objects. Who the heck wrote this? C tier, borderline a D. Oh boy, forget everything I just said about the last episode because this one is another banger, thankfully. Good eating right here. I think the thing I love most about this episode is just how unique it feels compared to everything else we've seen so far, which is a trend you might have noticed. Every episode that does something different turns out to be great. I remember distinctly how this episode freaked me out a lot as a kid. Hell, it still does to this day. I mean, will you look at this creepy ghost design? Amy being possessed temporarily legitimately makes for some good horror, I tell you. And the full-on integration of a unique story based off of that goofy boss fight from Sonic Adventure 2 is the kind of creativity I expected from this Sonic show, since it pulls so heavily from the games. The plot has a pretty simple setup that makes sense as well, as Sonic and the gang are on a trip with Chris's mother to her movie shoot, which is taking place in this creepy castle. So at night, she hears this childlike laughter, which all horror stories have to have, obviously, and she mistakes it for Chris's laughter even though it has a completely different pitch and tone. Dang, she really isn't home that much with her child. So she gets captured by the definitely not booze. Good dodge on the copyright there, Sega, and Sonic and his friends discover that the creepy castle is indeed creepy and is haunted by ghosts. When the stupid film director tampered with the stone on the pedestal, he accidentally unleashed the ghost into the castle, and they are able to start picking off the characters one by one, like an actual horror story. Eventually, Chris and Amy are the only ones left to save the gang, and that's where this infamous scene takes place. Amy is tricked by the ghost imitating Sonic's voice. Seriously girl, you love the man. How do you not know what his voice has from damn memory? Anyway, she puts the stone on the moon side facing up, causing the ghost to be fully unleashed. Then we have one creepy chase sequence, and Chris is actually the one to resolve the conflict for once, and it's great. When the sun side is facing up, the ghosts become weaker, thus Sonic is actually able to defeat them. But not before that whole section of the castle comes crumbling down, and they're forced to make their escape. They run out so frantically, trying not to free the ghost, that Chris accidentally places the stone on the moon side up again, implying that the ghosts are now permanently free to roam that castle, essentially making it inhabitable now. This is a wonderful twist ending that makes the resolution feel more unsettling, as they didn't completely win in the end and just barely survived by the skin of their teeth. Something rare for the show to do anyway. What an amazing episode. The jokes are funny, the atmosphere is great, the action is nice and well choreographed, and the whole thing just comes together to make one memorable viewing experience that will definitely last in the mind of any kid that watches it. For better or for worse, easy S tier. They don't come that often, so enjoy it while it lasts. Finally, what better way to follow up one amazing episode than to immediately have another great one? Cruise Blues is just one of those episodes with tons of meme material. If you have ever seen a meme from Sonic X, it most likely came from this episode. This is legitimately one of the funniest episodes for one good reason. Sonic is trapped on a cruise boat surrounded by water, and it absolutely drives him mad. We get to see him run frantically along the ship's deck, trying to escape his situation, begging everyone to turn back as he tries to guilt trip everyone with his insanity. It's so funny to watch. We get this iconic scene.
旅 旅でのわがままはみんなの迷惑なのよ。
Another one.
No!
And overall, this is how you should do a filler-like episode right. You make the premise character-centered, while having actually funny humor that works because of the characters. Seriously, there's so many legitimately laugh-out-loud moments in this episode that they use the characters in a narrative style of writing really well. I highly recommend this episode if you just want to have good laughs. You have Sonic tricking the crew in order to manipulate them into leaving, Sonic trying to run on water to escape, and finally, when Eggman shows up, he gets genuinely excited because he actually has something to do now. Not to mention the subplot where Bakun goes to raid the house only for him to realize that everyone is missing, besides Ella, so she essentially has to babysit the poor thing, only for that kindness to literally blow up in her face. Just a really fun comedy-centric episode that plays off the characters phenomenally well and makes for a pretty entertaining episode this season. There's not much depth in the conflict or character department, but in terms of clickbait and meme potential, A's across the board for this one. Easily one of the funniest episodes in the show, by far. A tier.
This is another one of those goofy-ass filler episodes, though it's not nearly as funny as the last one. No, not even close. Still though, this episode revolves around Sam wanting to do this huge citywide race with Sonic and beat him on national TV. Now if you're thinking anything like Sonic, you're probably like, didn't I already beat this clown sorry behind a bunch of times before? Why is he bro back for fifths? But this time, Sam has made some major modifications to his machine you see. He saw that new F-Zero game coming out soon on the GameCube, and you know he just had to cop some of those new features he saw. Straight fire. Okay, but in all seriousness, this new car isn't exactly a hovercraft like we all expected, but instead, he has extremely small tires on the bottom that are virtually impossible to notice. Now, this wouldn't work for a number of reasons, but whatever, this show has a talking hedgehog that can run super fast, who am I to complain? So this episode has a lot of humor in it that makes it an above average viewing experience for me. The race itself is goofy and quite clever at times. The way that they had to convince Sonic to join the race is a bit cringe and bad, but the actual race itself is pretty dang entertaining. I like how Sam has to cheat just in order to keep up with Sonic's enormous speed. I like the lunch scene and everything that happens there. I like the joke with the secret agent trying to convince Eggman to literally do an illegal act just to get Sonic's race, and the scene at the end where it turns out Sonic faked a photo finish and in reality got to the finish line way before Sam ever did and is caught on camera essentially trolling the audience is a simply iconic and memorable ending to the episode in my opinion. Sam's growing obsession with being faster than Sonic in the show is genuinely charming and funny, and I think this episode goes to show why the individual character relationships work way better than the broader group ones that are so common in each episode. Nice A-tier ranking. Really enjoyable. And we're right back to mediocrity. This episode is just a whole nothing burger. It's just so boring. We're back to having Chris and the gang doing slice of life things, but oh no, Eggman's schemes interrupt Sonic and he's forced to save the day once again. I will admit, it's not terribly bad, like some other episodes on this list, but not being bad is simply not good enough for a 24-minute episodic show. So the premise of this episode is that everyone goes sightseeing in the mountains as a sort of soft vacation. Unfortunately, Cream's Chao, Cheese, gets swept away by the river and they have to go searching for it. That's when they discover a real-life Chao garden, which looks way lamer than the ones in the actual games, though I will admit it is animated well enough.
So Eggman is trying to have his own little vacation, but is intrigued when he sees the group and thinks they might be looking for a Chaos Emerald, because this world is far too small and the main protagonist and the villains have to beat every episode no matter what. That's not contrived at all. Anyways, the stuff with Sonic is actually pretty interesting and entertaining for the most part, probably because he's the only good character who's not annoyingly bad in the show. I like how curious and emotional he appears to be in this episode, even if it is only for brief moments at a time. Like, look at this. That's so adorable. Unfortunately, it's not nearly enough to save this episode for being as generic as they come, so Eggman attacks the crew because he thinks they're looking for a Chaos Emerald still. Very intelligent man, I tell you. And then he fails because Sonic comes to save the day again. Sonic's the solution to every problem. He's simply too powerful. But oh no, the dirt from the robot accidentally contaminates the Chao Garden, making it dirty. But good thing Sonic is here to save everyone's problems. Ugh. I think you're beginning to see a pattern with these more blander episodes. Sonic is just the messiah that is needed to fix all of the world's problems. People are just useless without him. Sure, Tails could have made a clever invention to separate the dirt from the clean water, like some actual technology we have in real life. But nope, Sonic solves everything once again. By the way, the method in which he solves the problem is just by spinning around the lake really fast in order to dispel the dirt. Which, wouldn't actually happen or work, but whatever, at least we have this goofy animation to laugh at. That's just so bad. Easy C tier. I wouldn't recommend watching this, but hey, those Sonic parts are cool in isolation.
Yay! We finally get another notable episode. Although sadly it's notably bad. I'm sorry, but Emerald Anniversary as an episode just fails on so many levels. The premise itself is laughably stupid, the animation is lackluster, that's nothing new, and the writing is cliche and predictable. I actually think the characters act stupider in this episode than in Unfair Ball. At least in that one they had an excuse of just being arrogant a-holes. While I don't know if this episode is quite as bad as that one, I'm still giving it a D tier off the bat for wasting my precious time so badly. For those of you who actually care for some reason what this episode is about, the plot is essentially this. Chris's dad, I forgot his name, he's so forgettable, wants to get an anniversary gift for his wife Lindsay, so he goes to an expensive jewelry store. But guess what? He has the brilliant idea of getting a Chaos Emerald as a jewel for her to wear conveniently, and what's even stupider than that is that he wants it as a ring. This show tries to play it off as a joke, but I'm sorry, bad writing only works as a joke when your audience's time isn't the victim of such mockery. Seriously, many other people in this world should already know what the Chaos Emeralds are and do at this point. They have seen them multiple times by now. Ugh. Rouge and Topaz are in this episode, just thought I'd mention that for some reason. So saving you all the time with some extremely cliche and bad dialogue, Chris's dad essentially plans to give his present to Lindsay in the middle of her acting set while she's working, trying to make a living. Brilliant plan, man. How romantic. I don't even know how they were allowed to get in here, but as you probably saw coming from a mile away, everything goes horribly wrong. Chris's dad, okay I'll start calling him Nelson now, accidentally trips over, well, nothing actually, and ends up ruining the entire act. They start bickering and accidentally alert the main antagonist to the fact that the group are in possession of 2 Chaos Emeralds. Wait a minute. Why in the world do they have 2 Chaos Emeralds in the same location? Earlier this episode it was established that having 2 of them that close together would cause an energy surge. Hell, earlier this season we see the exact same thing happen as well. You'd think knowing this they would have, I don't know, kept the 2 emeralds separated at all costs in order to keep the most powerful and dangerous man on the planet from obtaining them. I would even go as far as to say that they should be actively working to find a place or make something secure enough to hide these things. After all, they are quite possibly the most important items they have in their possession. But nope, they not only do not do that, but they just casually decide to bring the emeralds along on the trip with them to Lindsay's set, even though they know exactly what will happen if they present them together. Oh my gosh, can the conflict be any more forced? So predictably, Eggman shows up. The action scene that follows is hilariously badly animated and probably some of the worst this season, and it ends up with Eggman getting the emerald. Great job, heroes. I'm sure you'll get luckier next time. D tier, bordering on F. I still don't know if I actually hate this one more than Unfair Ball as an episode, but they both genuinely hurt to talk about. Let me just move on.
Okay, an actually pretty decent episode, all things considered. This episode actually has a nice pace to it. Good jokes, good animation, solid character work for the most part, and an interesting concept. The beginning of this episode, however, makes very little sense to me as the context and setting is completely random. Like, did Eggman chase them to this farm or were they already here? If so, why were they here in the first place? Also, what's with this robot? Is it Eggman's? If so, why is it just chilling here by itself at the end of the episode even though it got destroyed in the beginning? That makes zero sense. Oh yeah, I forgot I actually have to explain the things that happened in this episode. So basically, Sonic defeats this robot and gets a chip stuck in his ear. Is it Eggman's or just some random object from the broken machinery? Who knows? The point is, once this chip gets activated, Sonic starts running and he can't stop. The premise kinda reminds me of the way that Sonic has to keep running in that Metal Virus comic, but that's besides the point. What's important is that Sonic's friends have to find a way to stop him from running continuously, and that simple premise leads to a lot of legitimately funny gags this episode. Like the whole thing with Eggman, he doesn't know the fact that Sonic is being forced to run, so he assumes he's just exercising. Because of this, he gets very insecure about his own health and how he should take action, only for him to divulge back into the same bad and lazy habits. It's pretty funny. I also like how he doesn't show up at the end of the episode as an antagonistic force like the other ones. I thought that's what they were going with this, but nope. He only thinks that Sonic's preparing for the next battle, but luckily he doesn't act on it or anything. A nice change of pace. I liked how the gang tries to come up with different ways of containing Sonic, all of which are pretty creative. The air balloon one, which would have worked if they just put less helium into the device by the way. The rolling device one, which should have worked if not for the fact that it literally couldn't handle Sonic's speed as well as they hoped. And the final one, which definitely could have worked if not for the fact that Sam is totally obsessed now with winning one over Sonic. and thus completely botches the plan. Another thing I love about this episode is how they handle Amy. She's way less annoying this time around, and the way she actually thinks and cares about Sonic's well-being throughout the entire episode is quite endearing and likable. She genuinely feels sorry for how obsessive she was and not realizing the amount of pain that Sonic was actually having. All around good stuff. The ending is really wholesome, the animation is surprisingly decent on Sonic running through all the places, and the jokes land pretty well. Overall, I wouldn't say that this is the best episode ever, but I would definitely give it a solid B tier, bordering on A. Well, we finally made it to the season finale of Sonic X, and boy is it not just as lazy and super predictable as the usual slop we've been getting so far. I'm sorry, but outside of the actually gorgeous animation for these last 2 episodes, the story and writing doesn't really feel that improved. And that is probably due to one major problem that this 2-parter sets up, and that is Chris's creepy obsession with Sonic, but we'll get to that.
For now, part 1 of this finale has Eggman tricking Chris and Knuckles once again that he can get Sonic and them back to Mobius. Yes, I'm calling their planet Mobius, bug off. Okay, so we're just straight up reusing plot lines this early in the show. I seriously can't believe that Knuckles and Chris get tricked by Eggman again. Like, have you all not been paying attention to the last couple of episodes? They happened in your life, you all should know better by now. But alas, they agree to help the Doctor anyway. This leaves the episode a lot of time to angst over the fact that Sonic and his friends have to go now. We'll never get to see them again. We even get to see other characters affected by this news, like Topaz, who gives Rouge a gem as a gift in return that she doesn't leave. Okay, I don't think that Sonic and his characters have been on this planet long enough to warrant that type of sentimentality, if you ask me. Hell, Rouge has been more of a nuisance this entire time to the government from Topaz's perspective, but whatever, I see what the show is going for. There's this robot called E77 in this episode that will become important later, I promise you. But for now, let me just spare you a ton of angst and character interactions that aren't at all engaging, and get you into the meat of this finale. So it turns out that Eggman was lying. He doesn't actually want to go back to Sonic's world, but he's okay with building the Eggman Empire no matter where he is. Who could have seen this coming? What? In episode 26 of this finale, we have the final confrontation with Eggman against Sonic, who is powering up his new Egg Fort with all 6 of the 7 Chaos Emeralds, and he for some reason keeps Chris as a hostage even though he disposed of Knuckles earlier. I guess he really doesn't see this kid as a threat, even though he's gotten in his way multiple times in this season. He would honestly just be better off disposing of him as well. I really hope this isn't used as a forced emotional moment where Chris can save Sonic. That would be really dumb. Anyways, oh my god, the animation in this episode looks just as stunning and great as the beginning of the season. You could tell the animators were saving the best of the budget for last, as we have actual 2D explosions now instead of that CGI garbage we've been accustomed to by now. Mind you, it's not trigger level quality, but hey, I'll take what I can get. So Sonic is chasing Eggman around and he finds E77 robot, which has the last Chaos Emerald. As Eggman tries to snatch it from him, he gets attacked by an army of US military vehicles, using the same technology he used for his mechs. Pretty clever writing on the show's part, I have to admit, as that's something that would realistically happen in this scenario. Back to the main story, the Egg Fort robot actually becomes a lot more powerful when it's being infused with the power of the Chaos Emeralds. So much so that Eggman is actually able to view Sonic running fast from within the mech. Because of this, he's able to give Sonic the absolute beatdown of a lifetime, the likes of which we have never seen in the show. This has Chris absolutely spazzing out. He can't stand to see his man get done dirty like this. Eventually, the mech becomes so powerful that it somehow gains sentience and Eggman is unable to control it. Oh no! One cool interaction I do want to admit during this fight is that Eggman doesn't actually want to kill Sonic. He views him as his ultimate rival, and it would be dissatisfying to get rid of him permanently. Decent character writing aside, it's time to get back to the more lesser characters. This forces Chris to have a complete meltdown and tear through the metal bindings that he was being kept in. Okay, so I have many questions. Number 1, are they feeding this kid steroids? You can't pull this power of friendship BS on me neither. Chris is an elementary school kid that looks no older than 12 and is able to break out of Eggman's bindings, the same stuff that took Knuckles and Rouge teaming up together in order to break. Either Eggman is deliberately using weaker bindings, which if so, smartest man in the show everyone, or Chris is secretly the Incredible Hulk. So anyways, after he yoinks the Chaos Emeralds from the deck, he just gives a passionate speech about how Sonic is his precious and basically won't allow him to leave. Okay. Really creepy kid. Like, really creepy. I like how this episode wanted to make this finale seem way more emotional than what it actually was, flaring up the dramatic music with the lyrics appearing on screen, and tears streaming down Chris's face. But the only thing I'm really emotional about is how Chris probably needs to be put in a psych ward after hearing him say this. Like, Jesus kid, get some therapy. So Rouge ends up saving the kid, although he accidentally drops the emeralds in the process, leaving them to fall in the ocean.
Wait a minute, but isn't that where Sonic fell? And oh well, you get where this is going. We get an admittedly pretty satisfying first look at Supersonic in this show, and he just completely demolishes this egg fort mech, like it's the no chance. And the perceived result of this massacre ends with the same explosion we saw at the beginning of the season happening now, leaving the audience to believe that the Sonic cast transported back to their world as the season finale concluded. But for everyone who's actually watched the show, you know that didn't actually happen, and that they come back in season 2. Hooray!
Phew boy, I'm not gonna lie guys, this season was not easy to sit through. I've been putting off this video for a very long time, and that's mostly because it's just so hard to sit down and genuinely critique and analyze this show. There are so many episodes where it feels like the showrunners just tried to do the bare minimum and call it a day. Because of that, many of the episodes feel boring and aimless, with some occasionally good scenes that are overshadowed by the vast sea of mediocrity that follows. I tried to be as charitable as I could with the show, taking into account its weirdly low budget and its targeted demographic, but man, that's not really a valid excuse anymore. There are so many cartoons made today that are meant for children, that have so much passion and hard work behind them, you can tell that the people working on them were giving it their all. But for this show, for the finale to such a promising first 2 episodes to end up with C tiers at best,
is genuinely kind of unacceptable. I'm really worried about continuing on this video series, as I do not know the quality of season 2 onward. Making this video has just made me a bit more cynical about the shows I used to enjoy. I feel like the quality of storytelling has gone up in recent years for many shows, but man, maybe my standards for what is good have just significantly risen for some reason. I for one are going to continue this type of media analysis, as I feel like it's a fun evolution of my channel and will lead me to making more satisfying and engaging content. With all that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, as well as share with other people and all that other generic YouTube stuff, blah blah blah. Be sure to join me for season 2 of the series, as I dive into probably the most known parts of the Sonic X show in season 2, where hopefully the quality will improve all around the board so I can stop dragging myself along to make these videos. I'll see you next time on the PlexiTier channel. Peace.